Kia ora mai, and welcome back to another episode of the Best Side podcast here with yours truly, Hips Effects, Hohepa, whatever it is you want to call me. But yes, awesome to be back with another episode, and this one metaphorically, but also literally very close to home. This fella that we're catching up with today, we've known each other for a while, but we hadn't actually sat down and had a massive kōrero like this. So it was cool to catch up with Ben and get to know each other a little bit more intimately, dare I say. When the world gets a bit tough or times get a bit hard, where do you go and who is it that you turn to? Well, in this episode of Best Side, catching up with introverted photographer Ben Darth, whose life took a dramatic shift when he was surprisingly involved in a house fire that destroyed the house. It nearly took his life, and it took a bit of time as well that Ben is now determined to get back. This kōrero teeters between some pretty dark moments, the bro contemplating suicide, nightmares that haunted him during his induced coma, which is a crazy kōrero. Make sure you listen for that one. And a lot of self-doubt that crept in. But we also get to hear some pretty illuminating moments too, from community support to the nostalgia that he got to experience, and a real sense of purpose that this whole thing has given Ben. It unearths his walk in a fire and how it's breathed a bit of air into his newfound purpose that he's found with life. So, whānau, it was my pleasure to bring you this episode, and it was awesome to sit down with the bro. Trigger warning that this kōrero does come, with kōrero around mental health and things like suicide and all that sort of carry on. So if you do need to kōrero, call the number 0800 111 757. That's 0800 111 757. Or you can text the talk now to 1737. That is text 1737. Here it is, whānau. I've called this one When Light Meets Dark with Ben Darth. Kia ora mai. Well, bro, I'm excited for this in a weird way.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit apprehensive too, only because, we've spoken about what we've spoken about when we caught up briefly over coffee. And even for me, that was like, I just said to you before, like, it's amazing the way that you're approaching this whole topic. Yeah. But before we get into like the matter at hand,
yeah,
I'm just keen to know more a little bit about you, bro, because obviously we've both kind of grown up around here and been in each other's circles a bit, but we actually don't really know each other that super well. Yeah. And it's just one of those, hey, do you know Ben? Yeah, how? You Plymouth. So, that's usually my answer.
That's
so
how it works.
So you born and raised here? Tell me about...
I was born in Palmerston North, but I moved here when I was like 2, so pretty much.
Born and raised here? Yeah, don't remember anything in Palmy, obviously?
Yeah.
And do you know what brought your parents here?
Family. Yeah, all my family's from here. They just had some friends there.
In Palmy?
Yeah.
And that's what took them down there?
Yeah.
So how are you got siblings and stuff?
Yeah, so my sister, she lives in Melbourne, and my brother lives in Sweden.
Fine. And where are you on the hierarchy of
I'm the
things?
youngest, yeah.
Oh, yeah. The spoiled youngest, would they say?
Probably, yeah.
And their words, I mean.
Yeah.
And my older siblings always tend to... I'm the youngest of mine, bro. Well, I was for a long time, actually. I got a younger brother, but he didn't come along until I was about 9. So it was a bit of time.
Yeah, I'm sure that's been said.
Cool, bro. So what's your earliest memory? I know it's a bit of a random question, but it's tough.
Shit.
What's one of the first things you kind of remember? Even if you're I know you might be thinking, I don't know, it's hard to think of. Just give me something from when you were younger.
Probably my family would always go camping in the Mount every year. So that's probably, So we'd go camping every summer, and that's probably it. Yeah.
What do you remember about it specifically?
Just being in a tent and having barbecues and
Do you quite like camping?
Not anymore.
I'm at an oxymoron with it, bro.
Yeah.
I actually got asked that the other day. People are like, do you like camping? I was like, it's funny. I actually used to do it heaps as a kid, but now that I'm older, I'm a little bit not really.
Yeah, maybe I had Dad setting everything up. I'd probably
Dad putting up the tent and everything. You'd tag along.
It was easy then.
Mm.
Yeah.
What schools and stuff did you go to?
I went to St. John Bosco in Fitzroy.
Cool.
And Francis Douglas.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah.
So you grew up in Fitzroy?
Wellborn.
Okay.
Yeah.
So tell me about what was Little Ben like?
He was a lot more chatty than
Than older Ben?
Yeah. Yeah. Got shy along the way. Yeah.
Any ideas where that might have come from?
No. Got it out of my system when I was young, I guess.
Yeah, I remember I read this theory. I can't remember actually which culture it comes from, but I did read a theory like everyone in their life has got like a finite amount of words.
Yeah.
Like, say, let's just say it's like 1 million, I'm sure it's more. And then you either use them, so people either kind of even tempered throughout life, or they go hard when they're younger and then chill when they're older, or chill when they're younger and then go hard when they're older to get them all out. Sounds like it makes a bit of sense, that theory with you.
Yeah, for sure.
So what are the big differences between Little Ben and Big Ben? This is so funny. This is not a conversation I was expecting to have.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely that. That's a tough question.
Yeah, it is, right?
Yeah.
Because, how do you kind of think and try and remember stuff when you're younger?
Yeah, I haven't even thought of it.
Something to ponder, maybe?
Yeah.
So transitioning through, like, school and stuff like that, did you enjoy school? Or were you one of those people who...
No.
What was it about school you didn't enjoy?
It was very... If you didn't play rugby, you weren't really in the welcome, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
So it was...
This is something that comes up a lot.
I kind of felt like a bit of an outsider because I was heavily into skateboarding. So I would be hanging out with a lot of people. Because you go to the skate park, you hang out with whoever really. And it's not so much about your age or anything. So I was hanging out with a lot of older people, a lot of younger people. So it wasn't really people from school. And I was really just sticking around school for the photography class. And once I got to that year where you could do it, it was mainly like when cameras were made and kind of the history of it, not so much. So I was like, I'm out of here.
Not the actual application of it.
Yeah.
That's strange. I never knew that.
I'm sure you get into that, but I was ready to go. So
yeah,
I kind of just threw myself in the deep end and would just take photos. I was kind of a piece of shit for a while. And just...
You mean at school or just in general?
No, I left school and I was just hanging out at the skate park all day. But that was probably the best thing because I was just taking photos of skating, which is quite a hard subject to take photos of. So it taught me quite a lot.
When you say it's hard, what's hard about it?
They're moving so fast and it's hard to capture that perfect.
It's funny you say that. There's a friend when we had the blood moon the other night. I have a friend who's what would you call it? There's a word for it. It's like an action sports photographer or something. He takes photos for rugby and stuff like that. And he said he found that easy. And he tried to take a picture of the blood moon and they all turned out not great. That's so...
Different thing.
It's so weird how I can take something running or someone running or a ball bouncing at X amount of speed, something that's standing still in the sky, I can't even...
Yeah.
But it is different, right?
Yeah, definitely. Well, it's like you always see in the newspaper, the newspaper photographer will go down to the skate park and there'll be a photo of someone and it's just them in the sky. You have no clue what they're doing because you can't see the ramp or anything. So you kind of...
I get a sense that it pisses you off when you see that.
And not to call them out or anything.
But it's just something you notice.
They just don't know. So you kind of have to be in it to do it justice, I suppose.
You got to have that experience and that perspective and that understanding, eh?
Yeah.
With I want to kind of flick back to the rugby thing because that's something that's come up a lot with conversations I've had with other people. Do you think that is something that's been, like it's kind of something that's been prevalent throughout the whole region?
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I imagine in skating circles it's probably a common conversation, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
just because I know a lot of my skate mates, like, you know, be like, oh, rugby jocks and all this sort of stuff.
I guess it's kind of like rebelling against it, I suppose. So,
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I definitely kind of learned, like in my 20s for sure, late teens, early 20s, that there's this, like, rugby was kind of like a representation of, I guess, of a system of sorts, you know, that kind of macho-ness, and that whole thing too, like you said, like you didn't get welcomed in if you weren't part of that. I mean, I was never an amazing rugby player, but I legit, bro, got the, oh, you're big and brown, you can play. Right. Like that's kind of what it was. Yeah. And so I used to play, so then they kind of got me into, I guess, got me the access, but then I had a lot of friends who skated. Yeah. And I would see it all the time, man. Like I would roll up to parties and stuff, and there'd be scraps and shit because, you know, like, and it worked both ways. Like the rugby dudes were definitely like, oh, these fucking loser skate rats. Yeah. And then the skaters would be like, oh, these fucking meathead jocks. And then I'd just be like, fuck. And then it was on. Yeah. You used to see a lot of that too?
Oh, yeah. It's cool.
You're amongst today. No.
I don't think I'd go too well in that. But yeah, it's kind of cool, like, growing out of it as well. Yeah. Like, everyone just kind of, puts it to the side when you're a bit older.
Yeah, when you're older, you realise that everyone's, like, was just doing the best with what they had, right? Like, at the end of the day, people probably just looking for camaraderie and friendship, and they found them in, like, an example that was found in those groups. Yeah. I always found it interesting, and I know you'd know some too. I'm not going to mention them by name because I don't want to call them out or whatever, but I always found it interesting when you'd get brothers, and one was one and the other was the other, because that used to happen a lot, eh? Right. And it would be so funny, like you rock up to parties, and there'd be like a big rumble, and then like the brothers or whatever would just be by themselves, like, well, we can't
really get into this,
No, because it's going to put me at odds against my brother. Yeah. I've got mum to answer to.
Yeah.
So tell me about skating. What, like, how did that start?
I think straight Tony Hawk's Pro Skater.
Awesome.
I think I got it for my birthday or Christmas or
the first
something.
One?
Yeah. And just got into it after that.
That's fucking cool. I've never actually met anyone that was like inspired so much by that. No, I mean, I imagine they're all out there.
Yeah, that's a very common thing, I think.
Because I remember at the time when that game came out, he got so much shit for like being a bit of a sellout.
Oh, okay.
So it's interesting now that on the flip side, that game has actually got more people into the scene.
Yeah, I guess I was so young I wouldn't have even known that was going on. So I was just like, cool video game.
For sure. But for me, it's just interesting knowing that was the narrative of the time.
Yeah.
That he was getting a bit of shit. Yeah. And he was saying to people, nah, hold faith, like this is actually going to help us. And I know that he went on to use a lot of that money for building more parks and stuff.
Yeah.
I'm not going to pretend I know everything that happens with his money. But I remember that being a big beefy thing. Yeah. So then how does it transition from being a video game to you actually jumping on a board? Do you kind of see that and go, fuck, I'm going to buy a skateboard, or what happens then?
I think my brother just had maybe one in the shed or something, and I'd just be out in the driveway for hours every day, and just carried on.
And then how do you graduate from that to like going to a park and doing it in front of people that can see you and like might have something to say about it?
I guess I was just too young to even think like that. It was more just like I'd go there and get in everyone's way and be annoying.
Be the dude that you look at now and go, fuck, get out of the way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, who's bringing these kids here? Eh?
And meanwhile, you remember he used to be that kid. Yeah. Funny, rite of passage, eh?
Yeah.
So then how do you go from riding the board to getting into the photography side of it?
I guess it was just such a big part of my life, and I knew that I wanted to do something with it, but I knew I wasn't good enough to go pro or anything like that. So I kind of just started filming my friends and taking photos, and a few photographers from Auckland would come here and I'd see all their gear set up and be like real influenced, and just got real into it that way.
Awesome. A few bit of some role models came down and gave you some insight. And my like biggest goal was just to get a skate photo printed in a magazine, and that was... How old were you when you thought of that?
Probably like 15, 16. And then I had a photo printed in the magazine and just, didn't give me what I wanted at all.
Yeah. I was going to ask, was it a thing where you saw it with yes, or
No,
you're like, actually, this doesn't feel how I thought it would?
Yeah, high hopes.
What was the difference between the dream and the reality? What were the things that you thought that, I guess, what were your expectations versus what really happened?
It was more just like I saw it and then it's like, okay, what's next? Which is good, but I guess you're never really satisfied. You
thought it would bring some finality when you got it done, eh?
Yeah.
But it actually made you think, okay, what are we going to do now?
Yeah, for sure.
So when those guys used to come down from Auckland, did you used to talk to them about your ambitions and wanting to do it as, say, a career, or just wanting to be more than just what it was at the time, or you just
I didn't even know that at the time. It was more like they would come here and we'd take them to places that we thought would be good for them to take photos, and I'd kind of just be watching and thought that was pretty cool. And then you'd see their photos and it was real inspiring.
Man.
Yeah.
And then when that all started to take off, so okay, your photo's been printed, what goals do you start setting after that?
I guess it kind of just, I remember Sean from Jet Charm, actually, he messaged me and was like, oh, can you come take some photos of the barbers? And my whole world was skateboarding, so I was kind of just like, what do you even mean? Like, so
you mean barbers skateboarding?
I was like, yeah, cool, I'll come along. And guess I kind of realised there's a lot more out there than just skateboarding. And there's also not a lot of money involved in skate photography, unfortunately. So
art's always been one of those things, right, that's been kind of, at times can be real hard to commodify, or can, hard to make it into a living. There seems to be like a steep, it's not like a gradual build up, there seems to be like a steep, and now, this is just from the outside looking in, bro, tell me if I'm wrong, but there just seems to be like a steep, like, I don't know how to say it, like I don't say you're in or you're out, but there's a steep difference between like going from doing it recreationally, and then all of a sudden you're pro, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
What do you think that ascension is?
Oh, just like non-stop work.
Yeah.
Like, you go to work wherever you work to pay the bills, but then in your spare time you're focusing on that.
Putting together projects and portfolios.
For free, not making any money. And
So let's talk about that then, because there's a couple of things to dissect here. How were your parents when you kind of started pursuing this stuff? Were they all good with it? Just because I know when it comes to, like, say, professional sports or pursuing an art, sometimes parents, they can, and not because they're like bad people or anything, they just want to protect their kids, and those aren't really safe routes. Was there a bit of fear projected onto you from your olds when you started doing that stuff, or no, they were cool?
No, they were super supportive of it. I guess it was never really like, I'm gonna do this for a career sort of thing. I was kind of just doing it as a hobby, and then it started to, okay, I do want to do this, so but they've always been super supportive. Like, I come from quite a creative family, so.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So tell me about your family then. What sort of creative stuff are they involved with?
Like, my mum's really into sewing and always making like quilts and whatnot. And my sister's very, like, she makes candles and very Pinteresty and
She's I'm gonna write that somewhere. My sister's very Pinteresty.
Yeah. I reckon that's a compliment.
Yep. Man, I wouldn't have a clue, man. I look at, I like, I'm going to sound like a dinosaur here, but I battle to navigate it.
Yeah.
Like, I have to keep it kind of real, like, boxed in with my socials.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, man, you can spend all day doing that stuff,
yeah.
eh?
100%.
And there's people, I mean, there's obviously people that do.
Yeah.
I get a lot of grief from my mates because the way I've got things set up, it gives kind of the illusion that I'm on there a lot more than what I am because I schedule it out, like, you know.
Right.
And so, like, we'll be sitting somewhere and then a photo will go up. We'll be out for coffee or something.
Yeah.
A photo will go up. They'll be like, did you shady off to do, you know, go to the bathroom? Did you go to the bathroom just to do that post? So I'm just like, man, I'm not going to explain to you how this works because a lot of them don't get it because they don't care, you know. So cool. All right. Must invite myself more with Pinterest.
Yeah. And then my brother is a graphic designer and like motion graphics and whatnot.
Cool. Bit of animation stuff?
Yeah. And then I don't even know where to start with my dad. He's crazy. He's just, ever since I was young, he always had something going on. Like he was in the shed making wine or something. He's really good at painting and he makes these guitars out of cigar boxes and I can't keep up.
He's awesome, man. Like I got to meet him briefly at the fundraiser.
Mm-hmm.
I'd never met him before, and we just chopped it up and had a chat after I bought a piece in the auction from our mate Charlotte.
Yeah.
And I was having a brief chat with him, and I got that feeling from him that he was a real DIY sort of tinkering dad.
Yeah.
That would kind of be like, no, I'm not going to pay someone to do it. I'll figure out how to do it myself. You know, I got that vibe from him, so that's cool that you say that.
Yeah. Yeah,
so,
he had the time of his life that night.
Oh man, the emotion that was coming from your parents, man, was pretty cool.
Yeah.
It was awesome. Like as I say, as someone who doesn't know your family super well or anything like that, and even our connection wasn't super tight or anything, but just knowing what you've done for the community and things like that, and the odd beer that we have had together, we've always had a good time.
Yeah,
so
sure.
I was like, man, no, I'm going to check it out, and it was such a cool night, and we'll definitely touch on that night and what that meant to you as well, because I know that had a pretty profound effect on you when we caught up. So we'll definitely chat about that.
Yeah.
So with the photography, and we talked about your parents being super supportive, was there any sort of, even with the skating, because they're both, skating and photography, I guess, are kind of, not so much now, but definitely at the time, right? They would have been considered like not social norms, let's say, or like against the grain pursuits. What are the biggest resistances that come with those? You don't have to speak specifically to them, but just, I guess, what some of the biggest. So, I mean, for example, we've already talked about like pay, sort of, and because I can imagine like there's so many people that are like, hey, can you come photograph this? Can you come photograph this? We're not going to pay you though. It's just like promotion or whatever.
Yeah,
a lot of that stuff happens, right?
Yeah. Well, I guess the only thing growing up, we just talked about my dad and how he's DIY and all that. He also loves his sports, so they would push me to play cricket and whatnot. And I was actually quite good at cricket, as much as I hated it.
Yeah.
So
You're quite tall, bro, so that makes sense, because,
So they would always push me for that. And I'd just want to go to the skate park and they're like, you got cricket. So when I stopped playing, I think that's kind of what you're getting at with how it's a bit against the grain.
Like they hadn't considered that it wasn't something you didn't want to do, right? And then you wanted to do this other thing.
Yeah.
That's what it sounds like. You sparkled a little bit when you mentioned cricket. So like, was that you were actually quite good? So it's ironic that you didn't want to play, or was it that you actually didn't mind playing at the time? You just preferred to be skating?
No, yeah, I hated it. Yeah.
Sorry, Dad.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome, bro. So then, fast forward, and obviously you've been working at the skating for a while, and then working at the photography. You have that catch up with Sean, and it kind of opens your world to the fact that there's more things to photograph and video as well, because you don't just do photos. You're in the video realm. Well, actually, you can school me on this. Which photography would include video, wouldn't it? So I could still say photography, or no?
No.
Okay, so you'd say videography, or just video. I know you see like
photography and videography. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
So these are the things that obviously you know.
Yeah.
I have no clue about, so
Yeah.
it's good for me to learn this shit.
Yeah.
Let's go there. What are some other misconceptions around the industry, or things that people like? What are some pet peeves that you have that people do? There must be a few. And I mean, obviously, the game here isn't to call people out for saying shit wrong. It's just there's got to be some stuff that you joke about with photography mates about. You know, you go to a wedding and people say to you, you need to do X, Y, Z or whatever, and you're kind of like, this never works.
I don't think it's really answering your question, but like Instagram filters.
It's a pet peeve.
Just don't even, yeah.
I knew that was like something that you weren't keen on, and when you gave me that photo when we caught up last time with the rubbish bin, I was nearly going to do it just to see if I got a rise out of you. I'm glad I did it now. I remember doing it. I remember swiping them on, and I was like, I'm pretty sure we had a conversation about this being a big no-no.
Yeah.
And then I was like, but the bro's pretty low-key. Like, I don't know if he would say anything to me. I was like, nah, but it's different, you know, when it's someone you know, you kind of do pull them up.
Yeah.
But I remember just
I think it's more the stories when people are like adding grain to shit, and just don't get me started.
So tell me, all right, I won't then. I'll take the hint.
Yeah.
So what is it about photography, bro, that lights you up? Because even that recognition, like, of the grain, let's say the grain don't even. So there's got to be a reason for that, or that comes from a place. So, and I know, like, with things that I have value in, or things that I'm passionate about, there's a reason why I'm passionate about, and then a reason why I believe they have value and should be remained sacred, I guess. Yeah. And I feel like you're very similar with your photography. Yeah. What is it about it that lights you up?
It's just kind of always been a thing for me. Like, when I was really young, like, if I'd go on holiday with my friends or something, that my parents would buy me a disposable camera to take, and so it always just, like, I was the annoying kid at primary school blasting a flash in everyone's faces, like, where's that coming from? It's just always kind of been there. So, yeah. And
what keeps you there then? What is it about photography you think is so special?
I don't know, I just get that same feeling. Like, if I go take photos of something, I'm just as excited to go home and see them and play around. And so that kind of satisfaction's never really worn off.
It's always stayed pretty long.
Yeah.
Because I have to admit, bro, like, I get it now to a degree, but I was one of those dudes, like you're saying, the annoying guy that's flashing in people's faces. I would always be the one going, oh, go away.
Yeah.
But I have to admit, like, when I do reflect on my teens, don't get me wrong, there's some stuff I'm definitely glad it's not here to see the light of day. But there are things as well that I'm like, shit, I wish we captured those moments.
Definitely. And
so it sounds like you got onto that pretty early, and you kind of have always had a thing for that, is that right? Yeah. When you are shooting something, what are you looking to do? That's a big question. And I know it varies from project to project, so feel free to do examples and make comparisons and stuff to help contextualize that.
More just something that's going to happen naturally. So I don't want to stage it too much. So, for example, with concerts, I love doing concerts because they do their thing. I'm in the background. You can't go on stage and be like, hey bro, can you just put your your chin up or something, like, you know, it's just happens and you've got to work with it. It's a lot more natural than, yeah.
I mean, it sounds so corny to say because I know it's attached to photography so much. Like, I just can't help but be like, you just really enjoy capturing that moment. Is that so?
Yeah, I didn't want to say it.
Yeah. I was thinking it too, bro. I know we're trying to avoid the terminology because it's been so cornified.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's cool. So then, concerts and stuff. How did that all start out?
So I went to school with Sam from Drax Project, and they were playing a show at Butler's, and then I just messaged him. I was like, "Hey, can I come and take photos?" And that went really well. And 660's manager saw the photos and was like, "Hey, you're around this weekend? We've got a show." They were on their 660 Saturdays tour.
Yep.
So got onto that, and then it just kind of stemmed from there, really.
You've done WOMAD too, eh?
Yes.
How do you find that concert? Because the only reason why I asked specifically about that is because WOMAD's probably one of my most favourite gigs in the world, bro.
Yes. I would.
What do you find challenging?
I would never shoot it again.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Would you like to speak into why or not really? What did you find hard?
I love going to WOMAD, and I've been every year for however long, but I just didn't enjoy shooting it. It was they had a very tight schedule. You need to be here at this time, where I think it would be a lot more beneficial if they just said,
go out and get us some stuff.
But, so yeah, I guess when you go to WOMAD, you just have that freedom and you just roll around and do whatever you want. So I kind of felt that held back from that. Yeah.
It's not reflected in the work, so to speak.
So I'll be going and I might have a camera, but I don't want to work for them as such.
It makes complete sense though when you think about the atmosphere of the concert and how it operates and what's involved, and then the schedule you're given. It's so contradictory, right? Yeah. So it's hard to mesh the two together. Yeah. So I completely get that. There you go. Any WOMAD organisers, if you're listening, bit of feedback.
Yeah.
Let things flow a bit more freely.
Just let us go. Yeah.
So tell me about skating then. What is it about skating do you think makes skating so cool? Or what lights you up about skating?
I think just what I said before about how you'd go down to East End and it wouldn't matter how old you are, anything like that. It's so diverse. So it was just like this big family, I guess, at East End, and it was cool.
It is a very accepting culture. Like, bro, I've never skated in my life, but I used to tag along with with the boys like Damon and Vance and stuff like that, and I'd come tag along and I'd just sit there and watch, or I'd be working on music stuff or whatever low key while they were doing that, and no one ever was just like, "What are you doing here? You don't even skate," and all that sort of shit, like it was awesome. So I can wholeheartedly vouch to what you're saying there. That's mean.
And I guess I would have been 12, 13, and I would look up to the next generation, and that was like Russell and Andrew Steele and Mark LaHood and all of them. So we'd be sitting back and watching them, and I remember I brought a t-shirt from Andrew Steele once. He did his whole block thing. Him and Russell turned up and they were going to East End and I was going to East End, so they'd hop in, and I just felt like the coolest person in the world. I was with Andrew Steele and Russell, and now they're like my good friends, so it's cool.
Full circle, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome that big brotherly camaraderie almost has come right around, and the cool thing about it is that I know that you do the same for a lot of other people. You may not realise it, but I know that there's a lot of people that I know you've made time for, and I think that was evident in the fundraiser and everything else. So it's cool. I love how things kind of, that reciprocity of the universe, so to speak, not to get too airy-fairy, but it's amazing how stuff like that can work out.
Yeah, because I hopped into the car and Andrew was like, have you met Russell? And I remember saying, I was fully fanning out, I was like, I've seen him in the movies. Like,
is that what you said?
Yeah.
Oh, that's
like,
so
I've
funny.
seen him in the videos. Yeah.
I've seen him in the movies, but I've never met him.
I haven't actually told him this.
Well, that's funny. He'll be able to have a listen and have a good laugh. And I can hear him, his big ass hearty laugh going for it right now. So that's funny. So hopefully, Andrew, Russ, if you're listening, I hope you're having a good giggle at this revelation that we've had. Speaking of revelations, bro, you've been on a bit of a journey lately. Where do we start? I guess let's go from the day before. Tell me about the day before and kind of take me through it, and then obviously we'll get there.
Okay. So I was on holiday, and it was obviously Christmas holidays, and we had just moved into that place. So as you do when you move into a new place, you're still buying things, and there's all those things you forget about that you need, and so it was back and forth, out shopping and whatnot, and just relaxing, and that would have been the 28th of December, so just cruising really. We were going away on a New Year's holiday up north, so just waiting for that really, and
just hanging out for your holiday.
Yeah.
And then, so you're moving stuff in. This is the day before?
Yep.
Yeah, so you're moving stuff in and about. And then, what? So the plan is to leave the next day?
On the 30th.
Oh, cool. So you had a couple of days off to
just
stock the house, do the bits and pieces, build an IKEA bed.
Yep. Yeah.
And then, okay, so then what? You go to sleep that night, and then it happens during the night? Or take me through that.
So that's the day before.
Mm-hmm.
So the next day, same deal, was just cruising, went and got a coffee and was just hanging out. And I think it was like plant shopping or something, and I'd just be back and forth from the house, and I'd go out again, and I got to the house, hopped out of the car, and I could smell gas when I hopped out of the car, but then I'd walk in the gate and into the house, couldn't smell anything, so just didn't think anything of it. And then I was popping in and out again, and that was that. And you get immune to the smell of gas, so it would have just left, and you just wouldn't have thought anything of it. And Letitia and I, my girlfriend, who lived there as well, we went and I think we got Burger King maybe, and we were just, we went and like ate it at the port, drove home, hopping into bed, and lit a candle, didn't think anything of it, and that's how it.
So what do you remember lighting the candle?
So literally as fast as the lighter went up was as fast as everything went up. Everything was in flames straight away, and it was like slow motion. Blue flames just went up my arms and into my face, and it was real quick.
And where's Letitia when this is happening?
So she's probably from me to you, but I was standing at the end of the bed, she was in bed, so I had the duvet over it, and I guess from reaction she pulled the cover up, just as you would.
Yep.
Just how I close my eyes, and if I didn't, I probably would not.
Wouldn't have any eyes?
Nah.
Oh.
So I guess it's, that initial reaction. So, yeah.
Those defense mechanisms kicked
Yeah,
in, those get
definitely.
cognitive shit.
Yeah.
So,
It's just like getting a fright, really.
so you're in a small room? How big's the room?
It's pretty standard size room, yeah.
Like a sort of 2x2 sort of room, or a bit bigger, or?
Yeah.
And so the flames go up. Now, is the room on fire at this stage?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah? So then, are you looking around trying to find an exit?
No, so I stood there, waited for Letitia to get next to me, because she was further into the house than I was. So she jumped over the bed, was next to me, and then it was like, okay, let's get out of here. And right behind me was the front door. So I tried to open that, but that wouldn't open because the initial source of the fire was behind that front door. So we ran down the hallway and
so it wouldn't open because like the pressure from the other side, or
the metal door handle was just way too hot to touch. I couldn't.
So when you try to grip it,
Yeah,
it fucking burn you.
Yeah, it's a bit of a blur, but yeah. So we ran down the hallway into the lounge and out onto a balcony. And there was no stairs or anything off the balcony, so we were kind of standing there just like in shock, thinking we were going to have to jump. And we kind of just stood there, and by this point the whole street was out on the road, and obviously Kerry was living downstairs. So it was a 2-bedroom house, but it was kind of cut into 2. So there was they cut out the stairway, and it was just basically 2 flats. So we're up on the deck, Kerry was down, and then people were all out on the street because obviously it was such a loud sound and whatnot, yeah.
So then, just to paint the picture, I guess, for people listening as well. So you've got a 2-story place. The front door to the place is at street level.
Yep.
And then the downstairs exit is kind of a bit down, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And so what they had done is instead of it being a 2-story house, they had separated the house into an upstairs and a downstairs, so effectively it was 2 apartments, so to speak.
Yep.
And so that's why you went to go through the door that was street level, couldn't, and then had to go out the back just to get away from the heat.
Yep.
And that was above the other door to the below apartment, right?
Yeah. So Kerry's front door, we were above that.
So then he comes out.
Yep.
And he sees you guys. And he helps you down, is that right?
Yes, so we kind of stood there in shock, and then the ladder just came up. And yeah, luckily Kerry had a ladder there, and we climbed down and got away from the house, so we just went and stood out on the street. Yeah, it was a weird feeling. Like, I remember just looking back at the house like, right, I'm gonna wake up soon, like this is just a dream. Like,
and that's what I've noticed kind of on what you've said so far, is that, you know, you've looked a lot at the house, you've looked for Letitia, you've looked for Kerry, you know, all these parts. There's been no introspection yet. There's been no kind of shit, what's happening to me just yet. So is it fair to say that kind of really hasn't clicked in yet?
Well, going back to when the front door wouldn't open, I remember thinking, okay, I'm about to die.
Far out.
Like, this is it. Like, when that front door didn't open, there was just flames everywhere, and there was just no way out. So I remember thinking that.
Far out.
And then it was like, okay, we can go to the balcony.
So the floor wasn't on fire, just pretty much every fucking thing else.
Yes. Yeah.
And you could see?
Yes.
It wasn't smoked out just yet, or?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then you're outside, you're looking at the house, you're thinking, I'm going to wake up soon. Then what?
Then there's a lady who lived across the street. She was like, come with me, come get your hands under the cold water. Because it was really obvious that my hands were bad. And so we went into her bathroom and I was standing in her bath with my hands under the running water. And we just waited for the ambulances to arrive and whatnot.
So at this point you're thinking, I'm sweet, I've just got fucked hands?
It wasn't even like fucked hands, it was just like, I thought I had like a few burns, like, you know, no biggie. I was more worried about Kerry's dog. To be honest, I was like thinking like, oh, I hope the dog's out, and thinking, yeah, obviously checking on the t-shirt, checking on Kerry, because obviously they were in there as well.
So then how do you go from there, segueing into learning that it's a bit more serious than what you thought?
So it's still a bit of a process really, because the paramedic arrived and I was still standing in the bath with my hands under the water, and the paramedic arrived saying, all right, we need to get you into the shower. So they cut all my clothes off and I got into the shower, and it was just cold water and they just made me do circles. I was just rotating in the shower for, I guess they like observed, like tried to see the burns and whatnot, and also it's just good to have the running cold water over you.
For sure.
And so that was 45 minutes in the shower, and my biggest concern was I was cold. I was just freezing under this cold water.
45 minutes?
Yeah, it was pretty torture. And then they turned the shower off and he said to me, we need to fly you to Hamilton right now. And I was thinking, no, it's all good, like I was thinking to myself, I'll go home, but obviously like couldn't go home, but yeah, I did not think I don't want to go to hospital and waste the time. And I honestly thought I was fine.
Yeah, well, like even there's been no mention of pain from you yet.
No.
So to me that really stands out.
Yeah.
I'm like, holy fuck, like you've taken me through an explosion.
Yeah.
Running through a place,
so
going down the ladder.
We're probably an hour later now. And yeah, nothing. Like obviously I could see my hands were bad and whatnot. There was skin peeling off everywhere, but just running on pure adrenaline and didn't feel anything. And then got out of the shower and they put me onto a stretcher, and that's when the adrenaline wore off and I could definitely feel the pain then.
When you got out of the shower?
Yep.
So, fuck, this is a fucking weird question to ask, bro, but I'm going to ask. Can you kind of describe what that felt like?
It was just a lot of pain and a lot of shock. So I was just shaking, and the landlord was also there at this point, Carol, who we know quite well, and I just remember being in the stretcher in so much pain, shaking, and I'd just burn her house down. I'm just so stressed about the pain, but then also she's there and I'm so sorry, I've just burnt your house down. Like, just kept saying sorry to her. Just felt terrible. So there was just so much shock and so many ways, I guess,
Yeah.
because there's the pain and the shock of what happened, and then I've just burnt this lady's house down, and
You're about to go to Hamilton.
yeah,
It's a lot to process, bro.
yeah. So I was just shaking, just freaking out, and then that's when I don't really remember. So I think it was ketamine, maybe. So they gave me some form of pain relief, and I was just out to it for the ambulance ride to the hospital here. And then I remember I was in the hospital here, and there was just people everywhere.
Waiting for you, ready to go?
No, so I was in the hospital bed, but it was in the middle of a room, and there was just people all around. So Letitia was to my right, and my auntie.
Shit, remember who people were. Fuck.
Yeah, so my auntie and uncle had arrived. My parents were in Kinloch at the time, and
Over by Topol.
yeah. So I don't know how it happened, but my auntie and uncle were there, and then just doctors and nurses everywhere trying to decide where I should go and if they put me to sleep or not, because there was a chance that my lungs something would happen to them while I was in the helicopter.
Oh, okay.
So they put me to sleep to not risk that.
Yep.
So the hospital is such a blur, but I would have been there for a few hours, and then they put me to sleep, and I just remember saying goodbye to Letitia and to my auntie and uncle, and then they put me to sleep, and then just no memory from there.
So that was the last time that you were awake until, like, you coming to.
Until
So that was the beginning of your 3 weeks.
Yes, yeah.
Because I know this. I mean, this is the part where I guess I'm unconscious of how I say things and how I word things, and I know that you know that I've got no intent of.
I don't mind it.
Yeah, and but that 3 weeks. What is your understanding of what happened during that 3 weeks? Obviously, you've learned retrospectively, or you're piecing stuff as much as you can together.
Yeah. So what I was seeing, or what was actually happening?
Oh, well, okay. What were you seeing?
For me, that I don't know if it was 3 weeks or however long, but it was just one big nightmare. Like, literally, I've looked into it, and it's very common to just have one long dream if you're in a coma. But it was just, the hospital was on fire, the nurses were doing real bad things to me, all kinds of crazy stuff. But the weirdest thing is the people that were visiting me were the people that were in the dreams. So there was people that I haven't seen in years, like family, and then I'd be dreaming of them. So now that I've obviously come to it, I'll hear stories of they came to visit or whatever, and I'll be like, man, they were in my dream. And for example, my cousin, who I haven't seen in years, I said about that fire that was in the hospital in my dream. My cousin, who I hadn't seen in years, was one of the firefighters that rescued me. Just weird stuff like that.
And I remember when we caught up for the first time after the incident,
Mm-hmm.
you mentioned you saw like a little Polynesian girl.
Yes. Yeah.
Tell me about that, because I remember when you told me that, I was like, whoa, like,
Yeah.
I wouldn't, like, it's going to sound so bad out of context. I'm not saying that Polynesian girls are a nightmare, but with considering the context of what you've got going on, your description of that, and then kind of how that played out in quote unquote reality,
Mm-hmm.
that's a trip.
Yeah.
So take us through.
So it was kind of in the middle of the nurses were doing all these bad things to me, and I kind of thought people were stealing money from me and all kinds of stuff. And the nurse came into the room and said, "Letitia's here to see you." And I remember very clearly this girl walked in, and it was not Letitia. It was, yeah, like you say, it was a little Polynesian girl.
When you say little, do you mean like a child, or just like little
just
as in
small,
stature? Okay.
small. And yeah, I told Letitia that I dreamt that, and she told me, yeah, that happened. I came into the room and you said it's not me.
And so you were conscious at this point, or no, still?
No, I was still in a coma.
But you were talking? Is it what the teacher was saying?
Yeah, so the nurse, because when you're in a coma, they still talk to you a lot.
Mm.
And the nurse said, "Letitia's here to see you," and I was out to it, but I don't know, flicking my eyes or something. And yeah, just was getting really agitated, like that's not her. So she left, and that would have been, yeah, really hard for her.
Oh man, yeah, crazy. And so that's like, I mean, I know we keep saying 3 weeks, but we kind of don't really know the time length, I guess, or do you know now? Well,
so it was, I think it was 12 days in a coma, and then even coming out of the coma, you're still on so many drugs, I don't remember anything.
Yeah, there's no like definitive moment of like
No.
being out of the coma now,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
it was a big time period. So then, how have you been able to fill in that gap, or those, you know, that, because that's, I mean, or even have you been able to fill in that gap?
No.
Because that's a long time to have a nightmare, bro.
Yeah.
Fucking 3-week nightmare.
Yeah. So what actually was happening was a lot of surgeries, a lot of skin graft surgeries, and whatever they had to do, really. Yeah, just. But yeah, I don't really know what went on.
Even now, in retrospect, from what people have been able to tell you and things, you still haven't quite...
Yeah. Like, I know the gist of it.
You know the facts, I guess, or like
Yeah.
the what's the word? Like the story, I guess.
Yeah. So, I've applied for the medical records,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a very detailed thing of what went on to like every time. So it's that detailed, like they say, whatever time it was, past urine. So like very detailed about everything that happened.
Yep.
And so yeah, I'm kind of just waiting for those.
And once again, I know you've said like just go hard, I've got a green light, but I am mindful of asking this shit. That missing time,
Mm-hmm.
it's got to be fucking with you, right? A little bit.
Yeah.
And like how? What's going through your mind? What are your emotions towards it? How are you feeling about it? What's what's it taken from you, or what's it given to you? You know, like what's
just it's just frustrating. Like it's such a blur, and it's frustrating that I can't put it together. Yeah, and it's just a weird feeling, just losing that time. Like my friends would come visit and they'd tell me about something, and I'd kind of realise like, holy shit, it's 3 weeks later. Like what's going on?
Yeah. So, on the flip side, and this might seem like a silly question, and I can imagine some viewers or listeners are going to get fucked off with me asking this. Why is it important to you to get that 3 weeks back?
Just, I don't know if it's important to me to get back. Yeah, I don't know. It's more, it's just a weird feeling. Like that's, all I can really
put it down to.
Yeah.
Just feels weird to have that time period missing.
Yeah.
Of sorts. So it seems like, bro, from our conversation and our continued conversation, and this other stuff that you seem to be working on, that you're diligently going about finding out what's going on. So what is, I mean, and not even just like finding out, okay, what happened during that time, but also finding ways to, I guess, contextualize or document your emotion or what you're going through with everything that's gone on.
Yeah.
So tell us about that.
Yeah, I've gone full like Sherlock Holmes on it, for sure. It's, just the more information the better. And that's just kind of my way of dealing with it. Like, I guess the first example of that would be going back to the house when I did get home. Because obviously there was the whole hospital experience, and my parents and friends and family would tell me about stuff that's been going on, but I wouldn't really be doing like my research at that point. So the first thing I remember of like going out of my way to put pieces together would be going back to the house.
And how was that when you went back there?
It was really good. Yeah. A lot of people, like I'll show them photos or something and they'll say, how did it feel going back there? And yeah, weirdly it was really good. Just a lot of people had gone through. So a lot of my friends and family had been to the house and they'd gone in and looked for stuff or whatever. And it was just a weird feeling, like having lots of people go through and I haven't seen it myself. So just, and even seeing it explain why I got burnt where I did, and it was just good closure, I suppose.
How you put together a certain piece of the puzzle by the sounds of it. You know, so, because I didn't realise that until you say now, you obviously got told, oh, this got burnt from this happening. When you got to the house, you would have seen, that's...
Yeah, well, my back is really bad, and light a candle, flames come at you. It's weird that my back got burnt, but my chest didn't. So that was always quite confusing. But when I went and saw the house, what was behind me was the worst. So it made sense that it came from there and hit
behind you.
Yeah.
And that was the saucer gas.
I guess, we haven't even cleared up what it was. So there was a crack in a gas pipe under the road, and it was pointing towards the house, and it went through the soil and into the walls and whatnot. So the way I was standing.
So the gas kind of like seeped into the house, sort of?
Yes. Seeping's kind of a weird word for it because it was 500,000 litres that came out of the pipe. So
that was all lined in the walls and
it
stuff?
was more like, yeah.
Fuck.
Yeah. So yeah, it did, but
yeah,
seeping sounds like a slow process.
Yeah.
500,000 litres, it must have been like blasting out. Just high pressure, I suppose.
Okay. So then what goes through your mind then when you find out about the source of it and where it come from? When you first got told what actual, because before you thought it was your fault, or that you know, you were apologising to your landlord even though you're getting carted off. You come to realise that there's something else that's happened.
Yeah.
What processes through you then?
I haven't really thought of it, but it would have been good, like a good feeling, because I know it wasn't my landlord's fault. It wasn't anything to do with the house. No one like around me was at fault. So it was a good feeling, I guess.
So then you went to the house and you identify the source of it coming from the pipe.
I guess I kind of knew about that before going to the house. It was more seeing, like I said about the front door and what was behind the front door and on the front porch. It's just a mess. So that would have been just filled with gas.
I remember when you were showing me those photos and stuff, and I was like, and I realise now kind of fucking how insensitive I was probably being, but I just remember seeing the photos and being like, what the fuck?
Yeah, that's...
Like the rubbish bin being destroyed.
But that's how it is, yeah.
And tell us, because I remember when it went down, obviously, as you said before, it was like Christmas time. So the busiest time ever for a photographer.
Yeah.
So what is your understanding about how all that was managed? Because obviously you were booked up for summer, right?
Yeah. So when I kind of came to it, obviously there's a lot of stress of so many things. One of them was, oh shit, I've got these weddings. What's going to happen with them? Because that's, it's a big thing. Like, people book those so far in advance, and it's a massive day for people. So you do kind of feel that pressure. And I think I was just, got really worked up, and I think I said to my mum, who was at the hospital at the time, and saying, like, what about the weddings? And she's like, don't worry, it's all sorted. Like, you don't need to worry about anything. Just focus on recovering.
Was that hard? Because you strike me as someone, and as I say, right, like we're not super tight or anything, but just from what I have learned about you and what I've gotten to know you recently, as we've talked more, is that you've, like, even with you doing your own investigation into what it's actually happened, you very much like to do stuff yourself, right?
Yeah.
So to be told, flag it and just look after your own recovery.
Yeah.
Was that tough?
Yeah. Yeah, still is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just so thankful to Mark Lahood and Kate Lahood and Sophie, who, just sorted it all. And so Mark and Kate did the weddings.
Awesome.
And
So and tell me if I'm wrong here, but I can imagine that in these moments, bro, a lot of negative self-talk can take place. Like you can kind of be saying to yourself, fuck man, you've let these people down and stuff. Does that happen or no? That never happens?
It's a lot of, feel like I'm in a lot of debt to a lot of people, for sure. At the start, I still blamed myself for what happened.
Yeah.
And I guess, yeah, the more I find out about the pipe and all of that, it kind of, yeah, gets taken away.
Yeah.
But, yeah, not a lot of, like, how you say, negative. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad. Like, I'm
Yeah.
stoked. I had to ask.
Yeah.
I wanted to be sure.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, if you were going through that, then I'm sure people would have been screaming at the screen or their phone or whatever they're listening to us chat right now, and channeling to me to tell you that you don't need to. But if we don't need to have that conversation, then we don't need to have that conversation.
Like, I've got a pretty heavy past with depression and anxiety. So when I did come to it and started to think about what had happened, I remember thinking to myself, this is really going to fuck me up mentally. So when people say, how are you coping mentally? I'm always really surprised and answering, like, I'm actually doing really good. And I think, like we're talking about with putting things together and investigating, that's just been massive for me.
Part of your process?
Yeah.
So let's touch on that stuff quickly then. I mean, I don't necessarily want you to dive into what went on in the past, but do you think there's been lessons or tools from that time that you've been able to apply to what's going on?
Yeah, definitely. I think if it happened a few years ago, it would have been a completely different story mentally.
What's the difference?
I guess just a lot of therapy.
Yep.
A lot of just becoming happier just with yourself, and
just a lot more in place to help deal with the event.
Yeah.
As opposed to a couple of years ago, if you'd gone through it, you might not have had those tools in place yet.
Yeah.
So what does the next few years look like for you now, bro? It is obviously going to be a bit of a recovery period, right?
Yeah, so I've still got lots of appointments every week and checkups, and obviously see a therapist, and like I say, I'm doing good mentally. I obviously have my moments for sure.
Of course, yeah.
But I guess I say I'm doing good considering. So, yeah, there's therapy and a lot of doctor's appointments, a lot of medication, these things that I'm wearing here, the compression garments, so I have to wear them 23 hours a day for 2 years.
Sure.
Yeah. And yeah, a lot of different like creams, and I have to wear these silicone sheets on my face every night. So I use those when I sleep.
And how is that done on like a mask, or is it just like a big ass sheet that you put on?
It's basically like that, but it's like strips that I cut up to where they need to go.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how about do you have any sort of like rehab stuff that you have to do? Is that what you meant by therapy? When you said
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Do you have like therapy as well where you speak to people about the event? Like a counselling sort of therapy? or is it more just physical therapy?
Oh yeah, when I say therapy, I mean like talking.
Cool.
Yeah.
Wasn't too sure if you
Yeah.
meant the like a
Sort
physical
of,
stuff.
yeah, with a psychologist. Yeah.
So actually, let's talk about that, because I know, like, we've touched on therapy a bit. I've been to therapy, and I know there's a lot of people who avoid therapy, or it's a bit of a taboo word.
Mm-hmm.
How does therapy help you?
Well, I'm just gonna completely throw it out there. I've tried to commit suicide twice in the past. So therapy for me was really just people that were supporting me saying you need to go to therapy because that's that's what you do. And when you are in that state, you don't want to go. But yeah, having that support, forcing me to go, and it just helped. Yeah, just talking about it, talking everything through, and they're obviously really trained to dive into whatever they need to dive into and make you realise things that you didn't realise.
Mm-hmm. Were there, when you started to go to therapy, you obviously, well, okay, not obviously, but did you, because I know I did, have big assumptions around what it was going to look like and what it actually was?
No, I guess I was just in like such a dark place that my mindset was no one can help. So I'd kind of just go in pretty stubborn, I suppose. And yeah, they were, really good.
They worked their voodoo magic.
Yeah.
Who was it that would drag you along and make you go?
My parents, friends, yeah.
They all used to get together and hold you accountable to appointments and shit?
Yeah.
Were there ever times that, like, that was really hard for them to do? Like, they took you basically kicking and screaming?
No. I was never... I guess that's a massive thing when you are feeling like that. You don't want to hurt anyone. So it was more, I'll go for them. And I guess that's that stubborn thing again, like, I'm going for them. This isn't going to help me.
But you'll go for them.
It did help me. Yeah.
Yeah, I call it Trojan horsing. Like, you sneak in a reason, but it's not the real reason. That's just the reason that gets you behind the gates almost.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other reasons go out and they actually find their way.
Yeah.
It sounds like a little bit that kind of resonates with what you mentioned.
Yeah.
Well, before we shut it down, one question I always ask every guest that comes on is, there's someone listening right now who's not in the greatest place.
Mm-hmm.
Bearing in mind you're not a mental health professional, of course, but what would I hate using the word advice, what would your invitation be, or what would you like to let them know in terms of navigating that space? I mean, we've spoken about your own experiences, but we've also spoken about your most recent experience with the fire too, because obviously there were times where you were freaking the fuck out.
Mm-hmm.
So navigating that, what would your advice be to that person listening?
I hate to say it because when I was in such a dark place, I would hate hearing it. But talking just helps so much. And like, I remember being in that space and so many people would be like, talk to your friends, talk to a therapist, but honestly it just helps so much.
Is there like a key moment for you? Because I know everyone's individual, right? So we can't say, well, maybe we can, but I don't feel like I can say, or I don't feel like I've got the right to say, like, this is what you can do to get over that hump, I guess. What was, now that you can look at it in retrospect, what do you think was that transitional moment for you where it was like, talking's not going to do anything, it's reductive, it's not actually going to help? And then what can you remember, even if it's a series of events? I mean, it's obviously hard to pinpoint a singular moment. But what kind of change do you think in retrospect where you actually opened up and thought, actually talking's fucking the way to go?
I think like I would have first reached out to some friends, because people would say talk to your friends and whatnot, and that was the thing that was just recommended. And that would become a thing. So whenever I felt like that, I would talk to friends, and I would still be in my mindset, like, so cliche, like, talk to someone. But then I realised, like, whenever I do feel like that, I do talk to someone, you know. So,
you were doing it anyway?
Yeah. So it's like, oh, holy shit, that actually,
There's some validity, there's some merit there.
And also, like, I went to a therapist and it was horrible. And I think a lot of people go to a therapist and they're like, no, that doesn't work for me. It's a process for sure, finding the right person. Like, I've been to 6 different therapists or however many, and that's nothing against them, it's just you've got to click. So
That would definitely be a piece of advice, and this has come up a lot lately, so I'm glad you bring that up, because it's happened in other conversations I've had. That would definitely be something I'd like to reiterate as well. If you aren't clicking with a therapist that you go and see, don't think that is therapy. That's just that one therapist. And to go and, like, it sounds reductive, but, you know, shop around. Have a look, go to different people and give, you know, look for that partnership, I guess.
For sure.
Where
because that person that you didn't click with could be amazing at their job, but it's just... Like, someone who's awesome at speaking to you might be different with me, you know, and that's what we need to remember too. So I'm glad you bring that up, because I forget to talk about that, and I think that's so important, and it's that we recognise that, okay, it didn't work with that person, let's try someone else. And even when you do find that right person, it will still take you maybe half a dozen sessions before you get into it. You're right, it is a process. With everything you've got, so what else is on the list, bro? You've gone to look at the house. It sounds like you might be putting together some photography and documenting your healing process. Is that right? That's just me shooting in the dark from what I've heard and seen. So I take a lot of my photos on film, old film. And
describe the film. Obviously, you know, it's like you went to, but I obviously don't know. But listeners might. What sort of film are you using?
Just like, you know, what your grandparents were using back in the day. And
your collection's fucking cool, and that's coming from someone who doesn't really know that space.
And I had a lot of film in the house where the fire was, and there was a cabinet that was the furthest point away from the fire. And somehow that film survived. So I had that. So I've used all of that film to take photos of the house and the hospital and recovery process. And we are making a book and just of all of that. So all the photos in there will be from that film that survived the fire. And it's called 29/12/20, which was the date, and we will be launching that exactly 6 months after the fire. which is the end of this month.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll, kind of ties in.
What would you say the goal of the book is?
Just documenting the whole process, and like all the money from the profits of the book will go to, we haven't fully locked in a cause, but it'll be one of the frontliners. So just trying to give back, I guess, because I've obviously had a lot of support, and hopefully.
Speaking of support, and I'm glad you said that because it reminded me, we're nearly going to wrap up before I mention this. The auction.
Yeah.
Tell me about that when you heard that was going down, and kind of what you felt and what went through you when you found out about the auction, and even the results of the auction and how the auction helped and everything like that.
I heard about it and I was like blown away for sure. But that was really early on. So when it kind of was getting planned, I suppose. And then I remember my dad would come into the hospital and he would show me the Instagram page. And there was all these people donating stuff, and that's when I was like, holy shit, this is crazy. And just, overwhelmed. Like, so grateful.
Mm. And so, then the night goes there, because you actually in New Plymouth the night that it happened, right? You come back.
I flew back from Hamilton that day. And was in hospital here for 10 days, but I got back that day. So that was pretty cool.
And then how was, how was that, I know it's a silly question, but I love hearing you talk about it. How was that helpful in terms of like the support of the community and stuff like that?
Like how the auction was?
Not the financial side, but just knowing that these people would come together for you.
Honestly, just overwhelming. Like, just felt super supportive. And I think, like I said, keep saying like I'm doing really good mentally, considering I feel like that is massive towards it. For sure. Just
knowing that all these people came together for you, just gives that a little bit more zest.
Yeah.
Well, before we rock and roll, bro, is there any kind of parting word or anything you want to mention that you feel like we haven't covered, or just something you want to, communicate that you feel needs to be communicated in this moment?
Well, fuck, if you smell gas, I'd probably call someone.
Awesome, bro. From me to you, and I know from a lot of people that will listen and that are listening right now, who'll be feeling all sorts of things, and they'll be cheering you on in those moments that you are willing to talk about some pretty tough stuff. They'll be cracking up in those moments where you talked about, feeling like a little kid and getting the car ride with your idols. Because I have those moments too. There'll be all sorts of that. So on behalf of everyone listening, bro, and myself, man, thank you so much for chatting with me.
Thank you.
And I look forward to seeing whatever becomes of all these projects that you've got going on.
Cool. Thank you. It's good to get it out there, because it is a small town and there's a lot of rumours, and it's good to tell the story.
Sweet, bro.
Cool.
There it was, whānau, catching up with Ben Darth and having a kōrero about everything from getting into photography to growing up and getting to meet some of his skate idols, to then obviously the big fire that happened to him Christmas just gone of 2020. So pretty crazy kōrero. Once again, those numbers, if you need to talk to someone, because some pretty heavy things covered in that kōrero, you can talk to a trained counsellor 24/7 on the depression helpline on 0800 111 757. That's 0800 111 757, or you can text the talk now to 1737. Don't forget, leave us a review on all platforms, Spotify, iTunes, all that good stuff, Instagram, Facebook. Leave us reviews everywhere and there. Let us know what you thought of the episode. If you're not already following, make sure you do follow, and don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube as well. We've got a website coming very, very soon. Excited to be launching that in the very near future, so keep an ear out for that one. For now, you can head to bestside.co.nz. Don't forget to spell it with 3 I's, bestside.co.nz, and you can register your email there too to get the early jump on what's going to be happening with that site. No reire te whanui, an awesome pleasure to have you with us today. Once again, shout out to the bro Ben for joining me on the podcast, and we'll speak to you all very, very soon. Hei konei.